Welcome to Week 9 for ED 2491. The focus of this week's presentation will be Cognitive Approaches to Teaching and Learning. This week we'll be extending our knowledge of teaching strategies and expanding our teaching toolkit. We know at this stage that to make teaching and learning engaging and effectual, we need to use a variety of teaching strategies that are informed by different theoretical approaches. This is because different learning activities require different approaches. And if we do not have this awareness, we would risk teaching in the same way and not only being mediocre, but also not ensuring that our students are achieving the outcomes they need to achieve. So by the end of this week, or week 9, you should be able to use correctly the specialised vocabulary to do with the teaching strategies associated with cognitive theories of learning, for example, metacognition, advanced organisers, graphic organisers, analogies and concept maps. Use correctly the specialised vocabulary associated with questioning and listening skills. Describe, evaluate and incorporate teaching strategies based on cognitive theories. Deliberately incorporate good questioning and listening practices in your own teaching and be able to reflect on them. Try techniques that encourage students to ask different kinds of questions of themselves and of you, the teacher, and reflect on their effectiveness. And lastly, observe the listening of your students and try different ways of having students improve their listening skills, which is always good. So, to recap the teaching strategies that we have learnt about so far, we know that constructivist strategies instruct students to apply their knowledge to a context of their own choosing. So, constructivist learning is really quite an active process, where behaviourist strategies instruct students on what to do and then the students basically do it. So, it's very teacher-directed, where students basically are instructed to do something and they do it. Whereas cognitive strategies instruct students to organise their knowledge so it has meaning, such as teaching a concept to their peers or organising concepts in a concept map. So where it encourages the student to organise their ideas, basically. So one essential cognitive strategy is the use of questioning, which encourages thoughts about whatever is being discussed or researched. And obviously as a student at university, you're often encountering questions to encourage you to think about what you're learning. So that's basically what is known as a cognitive strategy. There are a variety of questioning techniques that teachers can use. These are called open, closed, rhetorical, and Socratic. So what is Socratic questioning, you may ask? Well, Socrates, an ancient Greek philosopher and one of my favourites, used a questioning style known today as the Socratic questioning. This style of questioning encourages learners to arrive at answers or tentative answers about something rather than the teacher giving the answer. A much more active involvement in the part of the student, as you can no doubt see. Where Epictetus, another Greek philosopher in contrast, but not in opposition to Socrates, taught that it is more important to listen than to speak. He is quoted as saying, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." I love this quote, and I believe it is very, very true. As a teacher, it is most important to listen to what our students or others are saying, as this enables us to target our teaching or response so much more effectively. And I think this applies for not only the classroom but for life as well, as you no doubt can see. Therefore, both these philosophers inform questioning and listening techniques in teaching and learning today. And I have attached a photo, an image of the great Socrates in a statue. Socrates, and you've probably seen this statue from time to time, and also Epictetus. And these are 2 very famous philosophers. Epictetus being also another favourite of mine, as he says, it's not what happens to us that determines how we feel, but how we interpret what happens to us. I think that's pretty powerful. So, applying questioning to the classroom. How do we apply questioning to the classroom? Well, we can use a variety of strategies after asking a question of our students. Like speaking, listening to what students say is vitally important, as it has both verbal and non-verbal components that are essential for encouraging students to answer. Verbal cues can be what the teacher says or does not say, whereas non-verbal cues can be how the teacher responds through gesture, and behaviour. Attending skills, which are non-verbal, is a teacher's attention or interest in what is being said by a student, such as facing the student or smiling or nodding your head after you've asked the student a question. Whereas responding skills is the oral feedback that you may give, or either through speech or even the silence that you are showing. So if you don't speak, you're also saying something in a sense. By not saying something at all, a student is, able to decipher your reaction to their answer, basically. In regards to our learners' role in questioning, well, students who are passively listening have little interaction, whereas when they are actively listening, they are trying to understand the meaning by clarifying, paraphrasing, and reflecting. This is essential if you want your learners to retain what they are learning, basically. So, student listening. Too often, the focus in teacher education texts is only on improving the questioning skills of the teacher. However, it is very important to encourage your students to ask questions of themselves, of one another, and of you or their teacher. Our job as teachers is to have our students become very skilled at asking questions that lead to deep thinking. Deep thinking is the opposite, clearly, of surface thinking. It requires the student to actively internalise what is being spoken or asked. On the student's role in listening, there are 3 keys to good listening. Key 1 is that the student needs to want to listen. So what this means is that they need to be motivated to want to hear what is being spoken about. This is where I believe it is a good idea to always begin with questions that relate to your students' lives. In my experience, I've always, and you probably notice this yourself, is that students love talking about anything that they can relate with. So it's always a good strategy to ask students questions that they can immediately relate to and engage with, and then they will start to investigate the topic further once they can see how it relates to their lives. Key 2 is where your students need to have the skills to listen. So they need to be taught how effective listening, basically they need to be taught how to listen to what others are saying. So it's one thing to just pretend you're listening or, to be silent, but it's another thing to actually actively listen to what the person is speaking about, which is, in my opinion, a definite skill that students need to develop, and basically anybody really does. Lastly, key 3, your students need to have the physical conditions that allow them to listen. They need to be comfortable and have all their needs met, such in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If they're cold, hungry, tired, they're not going to listen anywhere near as attentively or actively than if they had all those needs met. So you know this of yourself, that you need to be content and happy to be in the mood for learning. So Marsh cites Pollard and Tan, who talk of 4 kinds of listening. They talk of interactive, reactive, discriminative, and appreciative listening. These types of listening are elaborated in your readings, but essentially reflect the dynamics of listening in the classroom, and something that you will need to investigate further, particularly as you are going towards spending time as a student teacher in the classroom. So, in this week's tutorial, workshop or discussion board, you will draw a concept or mind map that illustrates your knowledge of the teaching strategies in the Week 9 Learning Guide in a logical way. At the centre of your concept map, you will write the word pedagogy and take it from there. You might like to shade the ideas, techniques or strategies that you have already used in one colour, and you might like to shade or use another colour the ones you are planning to use before for your ED 249 Profix is over. Importantly, go to your ED 249 Lib Guide, Week 9 Concept Mapping. There's, in brackets I've put there in the 3rd box left hand column, for assistance and instructions regarding how to complete your concept map. Okay, And in your personal journal, you will write an entry about Featherston's teaching strategies. If you go back to week 7, where you were asked to construct a table that summarised the various teaching strategies you had to come across, you will now continue that summary by adding the different strategies that Featherston describes in his chapter. You will also be required to write a journal entry about questioning as you watch the videos outlined in the Week 9 Learning Guide. You'll write a commitment page for yourself in which you record what you are definitely going to focus on in your lesson regarding this aspect of questioning, such as using open-closed rhetorical or Socratic questions. You just make sure that you include your commitment in your lesson plans and the way you speak in the classroom. After you've given your lesson, you should reflect on how you and your students performed on the questioning and listening. All right. And one more thing, just when you thought that there was plenty enough, you'll also write a journal entry about Barry and King's teaching models. But before you do this, study carefully the 2 different teaching models that Barry and King present to teach a concept. While the examples they use pertain to the primary school, these teaching models can be used at high school and with adults as well. Also, you need to answer the following questions. What are the similarities between the 2 models? What are the differences between the 2 models? As a learner, which one would you prefer? And why? Which is more strongly inductive in its approach? How does each lesson plan assess whether the learner understands a concept? Remember, being able to define the concept or explain it is not enough. What we also want is evidence that the learner can apply it. How do these lesson plans do that, if at all? How would you modify the lesson plan on the concept of vertebrates to see what sort of possible misconceptions the students may have, or what is a vertebrate and what is not? What would you do in the lesson plan to have students let go of misconceptions? What learning theories can you see at work in Barry and King's lesson plans and in the idea of misconceptions? For each of these questions, I would keep my response short and concise and straight to the point. I know each of you are needing to use your time efficiently, so I would be straight to the point if I was you. Just very brief answers. As you know, this is not your assessment, your major assessment task. This is just to encourage you to think about the ideas so that you are engaging with the text and learning as much as you can, and it prepares you for the assessment or the exam at the end of the subject. So that's it for this video for week 9. If you have any further questions or suggestions, please see the learning guide, the subject outline, Learn JCU and Facebook for further contact details and information about this subject, or you can contact me directly via my email. It's always good too when you comment on the YouTube channel as well, because it's exciting for me because someone's commenting on my video, but also I like it how we're engaging in the subject, something that we're both passionate about, and anything that anything that we can discuss about this subject is lots of fun for both of us. So yeah, please comment. So thank you for listening to week 9 Cognitivist Strategies. Next week I'll present a video for week 10 called Behaviour Management Theories. Thank you, and bye for now.